seated. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, I'm delighted to welcome you to this honorary degree ceremony at the University of Bath. It is my most pleasing duty to commend Professor Kaushik Basu, who will be accepting the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws today in recognition of his international standing as an economist. An honorary degree is the highest accolade the university can bestow. In celebrating the 50th anniversary of the granting of our Royal Charter by Her Majesty the Queen this year, we will be recognising over 60 remarkable men and women in this way. Many of these honorary degrees will be conferred during our summer and winter degree ceremonies, as is customary, but 27 will be conferred at celebratory events such as this today over the course of the next year. As we will hear shortly from Professor Jane Miller, the university orator, Professor Basu's distinguished career to date has spanned the worlds of academia, government, and finance. Professor Basu once said of research that you do it for its innate joy. It is like composing music or painting. Last month, he reflected on his return to academia in an article featured by Money Control. He noted that his experience at the World Bank had taught him that a lot of policy in today's global world has to step beyond individual nations. He is therefore an advocate of global initiatives. In conducting research, universities now recognise the increasing imperative to work collaboratively across disciplines and across countries to address real-world problems. Here at Bath, we seek to do that. Academics now, more than ever, have the power to stimulate and drive effective change. I feel certain that in returning to Cornell University, Professor Basu's evident passion for research, coupled with his extensive knowledge of both the theory and practice of his subject, will engender work of significant impact and reach. We are delighted that he is joining us here today, and we look forward to the lecture that he will give following this ceremony. However, now, without further ado, I would like to start the proceedings of the degree congregation. So by my authority as Vice-Chancellor, I declare this congregation open for the conferment of honorary degrees. I call upon the University Orator to present the degree of a candidate honoris causa.
Vice-Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Kaushik Basu, Professor of Economics and C. Marks Professor of International Studies at Cornell University, and, until recently, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at the World Bank. Professor Basu has thus combined an academic career at the highest levels with being, to quote, an economist in the real world, as he puts it in the title of his most recent book. Professor Basu is an internationally renowned leader in the field of development economics, and this commitment to rigorous academic research with a strong focus on policy analysis has characterized his work throughout his career. Professor Basu holds a doctorate in economics from the London School of Economics. He has held academic and visiting posts at leading universities throughout the world, including the LSE, Harvard, and MIT. From 2009 to 2012, he was Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Among other posts, he has also served as the president of the Human Development and Capabilities Association and as a member of the steering committee of the expert group on development issues. He is a fellow of the World Academy of Sciences. He holds a number of honorary degrees and has been awarded one of India's highest civilian awards, the Padma Bhushan, by the President of India. He will take up the post as President of the International Economics Association in 2017. Professor Basu has been very influential in setting the academic agenda in development economics. For example, his 1998 paper, Economics of Child Labour, in which child labour was placed within the context of the household economy, inspired huge interest and admiration. This work changed the way in which the problem of child labour is conceptualised and hence had important policy implications. In subsequent publications, too many to list in full, but including Analytical Development Economics in 1997 and Prelude to Political Economy in 2000, he has continued to develop his innovative thinking and analysis, putting issues of welfare and inequality at the heart of development economics. In the field of game theory, Professor Basu developed the traveller's dilemma in 1994, which many of you will know. It concerns lost suitcases and valuable antiques. This has generated a lot of research, from laboratory experiments by economists to mathematical extensions by computer scientists. In 2010, he published his book, Beyond the Invisible Hand, Groundwork for a New Economics, a book which provides a compelling critique of mainstream economics, arguing that issues of culture and custom must be taken into account in a rigorous theoretical framework for economics. This thinking translated into his practice as a real-world economist. In his time at the World Bank, Professor Basu proposed and has been a champion of the concept of shared prosperity as a measure of societal progress, and of course we'll hear more about that in the lecture tonight. This concept focuses on both economic growth and equity, not simply economic growth by itself, but economic growth that benefits the poorest people in society. In a recent interview with the Financial Times, Professor Basu talked about putting his ideas into action at the World Bank. To quote what he said, "One of my first projects was about the role of psychology and social norms in promoting development. When we think of development and growth, we stress on getting our fiscal policy right, monetary policy right, taxation policy right, and indeed these are extremely important. But a society's development also depends on the social norms and mindsets of the people. Basic honesty and integrity are not just good in themselves, but promote growth. Tolerance is not just good value, but good economics." Honesty, integrity, tolerance. These are important values for the world today, values that cannot be stated too often or emphasised too much. Professor Basu has been steadfast in these and in his commitment to seeking to make the world a better place. Truly an inspiration to us all. Vice-Chancellor, I present to you Professor Kaushik Basu, who is eminently worthy to receive the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
The Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dame Glynis Breckwell, Professor Jane Miller, Professor Tim Woodman, students, professors of the university, and other distinguished guests. I feel honored and humbled to be addressing the University of Bath on the occasion of its turning 50, and also for having been conferred an honorary degree by the university. I mention the sense of honor and humility on such occasions, but one should also add guilt, since an honorary degree is the one degree in life which comes without an examination. Hence, with its news comes a sense of guilt of having got away without working too hard. All I can say is thank you for inflicting this guilt on me. My last visit to Bath was in 1973, and I have magical memories of the place. I came with a fellow student of London University on Christmas Day in 1973. There seemed to be no one in the streets. The city's long history, so evident in the architecture and the hushed streets, created an atmosphere which was both forlorn and stunningly beautiful. My only advice to anybody planning such a visit to Bath is to be very careful in choosing which fellow student you come with. You may end up spending a lifetime with that student. In my case, I got married to the fellow student, and she is with me here in the audience. When I corresponded with your university and we agreed on this date a long time ago, I don't think either the university or I realized it would be such a momentous day on the heels of this critically important American election. It has been a depressing election campaign and displays of deplorable behavior. There is a risk this will not be an exception but become a norm in politics the world over. There are deep reasons for this to do with the global economy. I shall be touching on some of this in my longer lecture later. But having mentioned global policy, let me offer one advice to UK concerning Brexit. For a complex technical issue like whether or not to be part of the European Union defined by the very complex Lisbon Treaty, referendums are not a good idea. It is like designing a new airplane by popular vote. I don't think a majority of the British people want to leave the EU. This is my guess, I may be wrong. At times, you cast a negative vote to register a protest, being sure that the negative decision will not go through, but your protest will be registered. But if too many people do this, the decision, of course, goes through. This is a major problem with collective action decision-making in voting. And there are specialists on that in Bath University who should work on this particular problem of collective action. So what should be done now? Luckily, the courts recently declared that the decisions to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty has to be a parliamentary decision. And I think that is right. Britain entered EU. The entry happened in 1973 through a parliamentary approval. Its exit should be done the same way. Now, parliamentary processes take time. Britain must have the self-confidence to realize that the EU is worried about Britain's exit, more worried than it shows. And because that will embolden other nations in the Union later to make similar moves. By continuing the process longer, Britain can get concessions out of the European Union. A legitimate argument can be made then that the referendum was conducted for an EU that has now changed, and it is possible for Britain to exercise that. So the Parliament could argue that the referendum does not apply anymore. This will be a narrow escape from isolationism, be good for ordinary citizens, and a deft game theoretic maneuver undertaken entirely for the common good. Turning to you, the students in the audience, I want to remind you that when politics gets nasty and economic policy challenges get big, the university acquires a very special responsibility. It is the one institution meant to remind us of our deeper, more humane responsibilities and to urge us to do creative, innovative work to find new policies and new cures for the world's big challenges. Members of the community of the University of Bath, you should be honored to be associated with such an excellent university which has already left an imprint in its relatively short life. To be effective as a thinker and at the same time to be a force for good, you need to remind yourself of David Hume's famous dictum to hold on to your normative goals and values and at the same time do your positive analysis and research about the world with relentless honesty. The ultimate goals one sets in life are important. When I joined the World Bank 4 years ago, I worked hard to set some mission goals for the World Bank. The bank finally adopted 2 goals, which are now called the twin goals: the end of chronic extreme poverty in the world by 2030, and the promotion of shared prosperity in all societies at all times. I will be talking and elaborating on these a little later. How important goals and targets can be, I realized from a trivial personal experience of mine. Many years ago, I read in a magazine that every time you go jogging for 10 minutes, your life expectancy increases by 8 minutes. That looked pretty impressive, and I took to jogging. Then one day while jogging, I asked myself, what is my target in life? Do I want to maximize my total time on earth or my total non-jogging time on earth? If it was the latter, I should immediately stop jogging because every 10 minutes of jogging clips off 2 minutes of my non-jogging life on earth. Friends, your goals are, of course, for you to choose, but let me appeal to you. We are 7.4 billion people sharing a small planet. We must try to reach out to one another irrespective of narrow identities of ethnicity, race, and religion. As a skeptic, I feel there are very few things in life about which one can be sure. Values and morals are important to me, but they have little to do with traditional codes or religion. I believe that compassion and love are the values that we should carry and nurture. Other normative principles should be derived from these, and this is broadly the utilitarian thought that was once nurtured here. As students with your life ahead of you, there will be good days and bad days. One advantage of being a skeptic is that on bad days you can tell yourself there is no way of knowing how tomorrow will turn out to be. I was born in a large joint family in Calcutta. The first place outside of India I set foot on was England. When I came here as a student in 1972, all through my childhood, I had planned to be a lawyer. It was on a whim that I decided abstract reasoning and research was so much fun that I would become a researcher and do research on what I enjoyed most and would not care less about whether or not I got any appreciation for that research. When I look back, I feel lucky I found a career I enjoyed, and that is really pure luck. When 7 years ago I was invited to be Chief Economic Advisor to the Indian government, it came completely out of the blue, and I was in a quandary. On a little thought, I felt I had to do it. I had led a selfish life, doing only what I enjoyed. I ought to give back a little. Those years in India, and after that, the 4 years at the World Bank in public life, turned out to be unexpectedly enriching experience. But what I value most in the world is the world of ideas, of solving puzzles and even creating puzzles, of looking for patterns in nature. It so happens that the biggest leaps in human welfare have come from such ventures. For that reason, the university, which is the seat of such activity, is very, very special to the world and to me personally. And this honor from your university is something I will always treasure. Thank you very much.
I now declare this congregation closed for the presentation of degrees. Thank you all very much for being here this evening. I'm sure you agree with me that the thoughts that we've just had presented to us will stay with us for a long time. Thank you all very much.